She had 8 words to walk back what her sister had run from, and the man waiting at the end of the aisle was the kind of man who had only ever heard the word no one time in his life, and the person who said it had not lived to say it twice. Imani Okafor stood at the door of the chapel in her sister's white silk dress, with her sister's veil pinned into the wrong braid pattern, and she watched the back of a man's head from 40 feet away and understood. With the slow, inevitable understanding of a body that already knew what its mouth had not yet caught up to, that she was going to have to tell him the truth in front of 340 witnesses. The dress did not fit. Adaize was 2 inches taller and 10 pounds lighter, and Imani had spent the last 14 minutes in the bridal suite holding the back of the bodice closed with her left hand, while the wedding planner, a small, terrified Korean woman who had been hired only for tonight and who did not know there were 2 sisters, pinned the train into a configuration that would, the planner had whispered, hide the gap. The veil was the worst part. Adaize had wanted it pinned forward, low on the brow, the way Yoruba brides wore them. Imani had not been able to remember how. The planner had pinned it the Korean way, far back on the crown, and the lace fell over Imani's shoulders like the wrong language being spoken in the wrong room. The chapel was not a chapel. It was a converted ballroom on the 43rd floor of the Park Hyatt, with the windows draped in white silk that had cost more than Imani's car. 340 white folding chairs in 9 perfect rows. An aisle covered in pale pink rose petals that someone had hand-placed at 1-inch intervals, and a string quartet that had been flown in from Seoul. At the front of the room, framed by a flower wall built from imported Korean white peonies, stood a Buddhist monk in red robes, who would conduct the half of the ceremony Adaize had agreed to. And beside him, a Yoruba elder in white agbada, who would conduct the half their mother had insisted on. And between them, facing the door, facing Imani, facing what was about to happen, stood the groom. His name was Tae Jin Seo. He was 36 years old. He was the only son of the Seo family, which meant he was the heir to a syndicate that ran shipping out of 3 ports on 3 continents. He had met Adaize 9 months ago at a charity gala in Lagos, where their mother had insisted on dragging both daughters to be seen, and within 6 weeks he had asked their father for her. Within 8 he had paid the bride price, not the symbolic kind, the real kind. The kind their father had wept over and accepted because their mother's medical bills had reached a number none of them had words for. Within 10, he had brought Adaize to Chicago to plan the wedding. Within 12, he had become a man Adaize whispered about with a particular flatness, the kind of flatness that meant she had stopped letting herself feel certain things in order to keep functioning inside them. This morning at 6:14 a.m., Adaize had let herself into Imani's hotel room with her own keycard, sat on the edge of the bed, and said, in Yoruba, very quietly, "Sister, I cannot do this. I am going to Toronto. I have a friend there. I am sorry. I love you. Do not look for me. Tell Mother I am alive. Do not tell her where." Imani had been awake. Imani had been awake because Imani had not slept properly in 3 weeks, because Imani had known, the way sisters knew, that Adaize was going to break. Imani had said, "I will buy you the hour." Adaize had cried. Adaize had said, "He will kill us both." Imani had said, "He will not kill me. I am not what he paid for. The contract is for you. The bride price was for you. He will be angry. He will not be the kind of angry you survive by running. He will be the kind of angry that has to look at what he bought and decide whether to keep it, and that takes time, and time is what you need." Adaize had looked at her. Adaize had said, "Sister, he is going to look at you, and he is not going to want to give you back." Imani had not had an answer for that. She had not had an answer because she had only seen Tae Jin Seo twice. Once at a dinner 6 weeks ago, where he had sat at the head of a long table and had not looked at her, because he was already engaged to her sister and had no reason to look at any other woman in the room. And once at a garden party last week, where he had paused beside her at the bar for exactly 4 seconds, and his eyes had passed over her face and stopped, not for long, not long enough to mean anything, and then he had moved on, and Imani had spent the rest of the night telling herself that the 4 seconds had been her imagination. It had not been her imagination. Adeze had seen it from across the lawn. Adeze, who had been miserable for 2 months and had been hiding it from everyone, had walked back to Imani that night and said, very quietly, "He saw you. He has not seen me in 3 months, and he saw you in 4 seconds. He will not say anything. He cannot. But he saw." Imani had told her sister she was being paranoid. She had not been being paranoid. Now Imani was standing at the door of the chapel in her sister's dress, and the wedding planner was making the final adjustment to the veil, and the doors were about to open. And Imani had decided 2 hours ago that she would walk down the aisle, and that she would lift the veil at the altar, and that she would tell Tae Jin Seo in front of 340 witnesses that his bride had left. Him and his bride's sister had come in her place to give him the chance to be angry in a room with cameras and dignitaries and a Buddhist monk and a Yoruba elder, instead of in a hotel suite alone with her father. She had decided that the audience was the only weapon she had. The string quartet began to play. The doors opened. The room of 340 people stood as one. She walked. She walked because her father, who was on a plane to Lagos and did not know yet that his daughter was missing, was not here to walk her. She walked because she had been walking down hallways in her sister's shadow for 26 years, and one more aisle would not break her. She walked because the man at the end of the aisle was looking at her the way he had looked at her at the garden party last week. The 4 seconds she had told herself were her imagination, except now the 4 seconds were 40 feet long and getting shorter. He knew. She did not know how she knew that he knew. But she knew. He was 40 feet away, and his face was the same controlled mask he had worn through every public moment of the engagement. But his eyes were tracking her in a way they had not tracked Daisy a single time in 9 months. He was watching the way her body moved inside the dress, the way the gap at the back was being held closed by a hand under the train of the dress that he was the only person in the room positioned to see. The way the veil sat wrong. The way her braids were the small box braids Imani wore for work, not the long ceremonial twists Adeze had spent 6 hours getting done yesterday. He knew before she reached the 3rd row. By the time she reached the altar, he had been knowing for 31 seconds, and he had not moved a muscle. The monk spoke. The elder spoke. The words came in Korean and in Yoruba, and Imani did not hear any of them. Because Tae Jin Seo was looking at her, and his eyes were doing something she did not have a word for, and the moment for lifting the veil arrived. He lifted it. He did not let the monk do it. He did not let the elder do it. He reached forward, with one hand, slowly, and he lifted the veil himself, and he set it back over the crown of her head, and he looked at her face from a distance of 18 inches, and the entire room held its breath, because the entire room understood, in the same instant, that something was wrong. Imani opened her mouth. She said it. "I'm not your bride, sir. I'm her sister." She said it in a whisper, low enough that the monk did not hear it, low enough that the elder did not hear it, low enough that the front row almost did not hear it. She said it because the audience was supposed to be the weapon, and now that she was here, in the moment, she did not have the cruelty to humiliate him in front of 340 people. She had decided 2 hours ago to do it loud, She did it quiet. The whisper landed. Tae Jin Seo did not move. For 3 full seconds, he did not move. The room was suspended around them. 340 people watching a tableau they could not interpret. And inside that suspension, Imani watched his face do something she had not expected. The corner of his mouth, only the left corner, only barely, moved upward, and then settled, and then moved upward again, and stayed. He smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was not a cruel smile either. It was the smile of a man who had just been handed something he had been wanting in a way he had not given himself permission to know he was wanting. And the universe had wrapped it in white silk and walked it down an aisle, and his only job now was to decide what to do with it. He leaned forward. He put his mouth 6 inches from her ear. He said, in Korean, in the voice men used when they were not making a public statement but a private one, "Where is she?" "Gone. Where, I won't tell you. You think you have to protect her from me. I know I do." He pulled back. He looked at her face again. His eyes were brown, not Korean brown, almost black. And there was something behind them now that Imani had not seen at the garden party. Something that had been kept on a leash for 340 witnesses and was now, in the 6-inch space between them, off the leash for the first time. He said, in English, quiet enough that only she could hear, "You are very brave, or you are very stupid, and I have not yet decided which. Walk back up the aisle with me. We are going to tell the room that we need a moment. We are going to go into the suite behind the altar. We are going to have a conversation. After that conversation, I will know what kind of woman you are, and you will know what kind of man I am, and we will both decide what happens next. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Then take my arm, Miss Okafor. Try not to trip on your sister's dress. Welcome back, my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers. Before we go any further into the conversation Imani Okafor is about to have inside a suite behind an altar with a man who just had his entire wedding taken from him, hit subscribe, tap that like button, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far our little dark romance family has reached tonight. Every soul who finds their way here helps me keep writing about the women the world tried to swap, replace, and overlook, and the men who finally looked. Now find your quiet place. Pour something warm. Settle in. Because what happens in the next 8 minutes is going to undo everything Imani has spent 26 years pretending about herself, and everything Tae Jin Seo has been refusing to admit about what he actually wanted. The suite behind the altar was not a suite. It was a contingency room disguised as a bridal lounge, a small chamber the hotel kept on retainer for the specific category of moments when something inside a ceremony broke, and the bride or the groom or the family needed a place to be broken privately for 15 minutes before walking back out into the photographs. The walls were upholstered in pale cream silk. The chairs were 2, facing each other, 3 feet apart, the way 2 chairs were arranged for confessions or negotiations or the small, precise endings of things that had not been allowed to end in the open. The window faced east. The morning sun came in low and gold. There was a side table with a pitcher of water and 2 glasses, and a box of tissues that had been refilled by housekeeping at 6 a.m. Imani sat in one chair. Tae Jin sat in the other. He had not let go of her arm until she was seated. He had not been gripping it. He had been touching it the way a man touched an object he was deciding whether to set down or carry. He sat. He crossed one ankle over the other knee. He looked at her. For a long time he did not speak. When he spoke, he said, in English, "Your name." "Imani." "Your full name." "Imani Adesua Okafor." "Your age." 26. "Your work." I have a master's in epidemiology. I work for the Cook County Department of Public Health as a data analyst. I track tuberculosis cases. I have been doing that for 4 years. A pause. His eyes did not move. Your sister did not tell me you existed for 4 months. I know. Why? She held his eyes. She did not look down. She had decided, somewhere between the door of the chapel and the lifting of the veil, that she was not going to look down at this man for the rest of the conversation, whatever it was about to become. Because Adeze knew that if she told you about me, you would meet me eventually, and she was already afraid of how you looked at women. She did not want to bring me into a room with you. She did not tell our mother either, until the engagement was already moving. She protected me by pretending I was not in the family. She protected me until last week at the garden party, when I walked into a room she had not been able to keep me out of. And she watched you see me, and she understood that she had been right, and she ran this morning at 6 a.m. because she could no longer protect both of us from inside this marriage. Taejin Seo did not say anything. After a moment, he uncrossed his legs. He leaned forward. He put his elbows on his knees. He folded his hands. He looked at her hands instead of her face, and he said, very quietly, I have not loved your sister, Miss Okafor. I have been engaged to her. I have been correct with her. I have been generous with her. I have not laid a hand on her. I have given her every freedom my family's structure allows a woman in her position. I have not loved her. She has known that. She has not loved me. I have known that. The arrangement was an arrangement. The bride price was a bride price. Your father agreed to it because your mother's care required it. Your sister agreed to it because she believed she could survive it. I agreed to it because I had reached an age at which my family required me to agree to something, and your sister was beautiful and intelligent, and the daughter of a man whose lineage my mother approved of, and that was sufficient. He paused. It was sufficient until last week. She did not say anything. At the garden party, he said, I walked past you at the bar. I paused for 4 seconds. In those 4 seconds, I understood 3 things. I understood that the woman I was about to marry was the wrong woman in your family. I understood that I had agreed to this marriage under the assumption that I would not feel anything about anyone, ever, because I had not felt anything about anyone in a long time, and I had been told by my own life that this was simply the new permanent shape of me. And I understood that I had been wrong about that, and that I had been wrong about it for 4 seconds in a garden, and that I did not know what to do with the information, so I did what men in my position do with inconvenient information. I filed it. I went back to your sister. I continued the wedding planning. I told myself the 4 seconds had been a passing thing. He looked up. His eyes met hers. Now you are sitting in front of me in her dress, and the 4 seconds is 40 minutes, and I am going to be honest with you for the first time in my adult life. Because I owe you that, and because you have just done something that I would not have had the courage to do at your age. She held his eyes. She said, What did I do? You walked down an aisle in front of 340 witnesses to give your sister an hour she needed. And you did it knowing that the man at the end of the aisle was a man your sister was afraid of. And you whispered the truth to him instead of shouting it, because you did not have the cruelty to humiliate him in public, even when humiliating him in public was the safest thing for you to do. He paused. That is what kind of woman you are, Miss Okafor. I asked 30 minutes ago. I have my answer. She did not say anything. He sat back. Your sister is on a flight to Toronto, he said, almost gently. She left at 7:15 from O'Hare under the name on the second passport your father gave her when she was 18. She will land at 9:42. She has a friend in the Junction neighborhood named Neka who is expecting her. She has $14,000 and a checking account I do not control. She is safe. She has been safe since 6 a.m. I knew at 6:52 when my security flagged the second passport at TSA. I let her go. I did not call my people. I did not stop the wedding. I came to the altar because I wanted to see what your family would do with the morning. I wanted to see if your father knew. I wanted to see if your mother had been complicit. I wanted to see who would be standing in front of me when the doors opened. Imani stared at him. You knew, she said. I knew. You knew at the altar. I knew at the altar. I knew when you walked down the aisle. I knew before you reached the third row. I lifted the veil because I wanted to see your face when you said it. I wanted to see whether you would say it loud or quiet. I wanted to know whether the woman who had walked in your sister's place was a woman who would use my humiliation to protect herself, or a woman who would protect me from my own humiliation even while she was the one delivering the news. He paused. You whispered, Miss Okafor. She closed her eyes. She had been walked into a room with a man who had been 3 moves ahead of her since 6 a.m. She had been so busy buying her sister an hour that she had not noticed she was the one being bought. She opened her eyes. What do you want? She said. He did not answer immediately. When he did, he said it carefully, the way a man placed a glass on a polished table when he did not want to leave a ring. I want 3 things, Miss Okafor. The first is that I am going to walk back out into that chapel and tell 340 people that there has been a private family matter, that the wedding is postponed, and that they are to enjoy the reception which will be served in 20 minutes. I am going to take responsibility for the postponement publicly. Your sister's name will not appear in any account of today's events. Your family's honor will be intact. Your father will not lose face. Your mother will not lose her care. The bride price will not be reclaimed. That is the first thing. He held up a second finger. The second is that you are going to go home today to your apartment in Logan Square. You are going to sleep. You are going to eat. You are going to call your mother and tell her your sister is alive, and that the wedding has been postponed, and that more information will follow. You are not going to call me. You are not going to come looking for me. You are not going to think about the 4 seconds at the garden party. If you choose never to see me again, I will respect that, and I will personally guarantee that no one from my family or my organization will ever approach you for any reason for the rest of your life. That is the second thing. He paused. He looked at her for a long moment. The third is harder. Say it. If in some number of weeks or months or years from now you decide that you would like to know who I am, not as the man who almost married your sister, but as the man who saw you at a garden party for 4 seconds and could not file the information correctly, I would like you to come find me. I am not going to pursue you, Miss Okafor. I am not going to use my resources to engineer your circumstances. I am not going to be the kind of man your sister was afraid of. I am going to be a man who waits, and waits poorly, and tells you now that he is waiting so that you do not have to wonder. She did not say anything for a long time. Outside the door of the suite, 340 people were beginning to murmur. The string quartet had stopped. The monk and the elder were conferring in low voices. The wedding planner was crying somewhere in the hallway. Imani looked at the man across from her. She looked at his hands, folded, unmoving, the knuckles slightly white. She looked at his face, the controlled mask still mostly in place, but with the small left corner of the mouth thing that had not fully gone away since the altar. She looked at the gold sun coming in through the east window and lighting the side of his jaw. And she thought about her sister at 30,000 feet over Lake Erie, and she thought about her mother in a hospital in Lagos, and she thought about every man who had ever walked past her in a room because her sister was in the room first. She said, "I'm going to need a coat. I will have one brought. And a car. Already waiting. And I would like." She paused. She looked at him. "I would like to know your full name." He looked at her. The smile came back. Smaller this time. "Real Taejin Aranseo," he said. "My mother gave me the middle name. She wanted me to have a name that would work in 2 rooms. Aaron, yes, I'll remember it." "That is all I am asking, Miss Okafor." He stood. He buttoned his suit jacket. He walked to the door of the suite. He paused with his hand on the handle. He turned. "One more thing," he said. "Yes, your sister is going to need a doctor in Toronto. She did not say goodbye to your mother. She is going to spiral in approximately 72 hours when the adrenaline burns off. There is a woman named Dr. Kemi Adebayo who runs a private practice in Mississauga and who specializes in exactly this kind of recovery. She is Nigerian. She does not take new patients. She will take your sister. I am sending you the contact information by the time you reach your car. Use it. Do not tell your sister where it came from." He opened the door. He walked out. She sat in the chair for a long moment. Then she stood. She walked to the mirror on the side wall. She looked at herself in her sister's dress. She lifted the veil off her hair and set it on the chair. She undid the wedding planner's bad pins one at a time. She let her own braids fall down her back the way she had worn them this morning. She straightened her shoulders. She walked out of the suite, into a hallway full of people who did not know yet what had just happened, and she did not look back at the chapel doors.